Standing here on the east side of Looe Harbour, we watch as the ferryman makes his way down the Looe River towards West Looe, which is where the Looe Heritage Trail begins. Let's embark on a voyage of discovery starting at St Nicholas Church, which was established in the 14th century as a chapel of ease by a member of the Dorney family of Cheviot. This small church, situated as it is beside the river, is usually open and is an excellent starting point for us as we follow the trail around the historical fishing port of Looe. The mother church of the West Looe parish was at Talland, about 4 miles west of Looe. Talland Church is on the coastal path between Polperro and Looe and overlooks a quiet little bay. This church is very unusual in that the tower is built separately from the body of the church and the two are joined by a small covered archway. In the mid-16th century, St Nicholas Church was used as a guildhall by the borough council and the magistrates. A small jail was built out from the north wall, and the original entrance to it, the Dark House, is still visible though blocked up. In 1852, St Nicholas Church was taken back into the care of the church commissioners and restored by the efforts of the Reverend E. Seymour. The oak pews with their carved and decorated ends, the priest's stall and the font cover are splendid examples of modern ecclesiastical furniture by the Reverend John Harvey, 1960. The two larger east stained glass windows greet us as we enter the church. There is also a smaller 19th century window over the west door depicting St Nicholas. The main window over the altar is 19th century also and pleasantly Victorian. There is a 20th century Good Samaritan stained glass window on the east wall of the north aisle with a curious artist's aberration, 2 left feet. The tower clock face is an exact replica of the 18th century original, but the mechanism is electronic with a timing adjustment controlled by a radio signal. In fact, it was only in 2000 that the money was raised, mainly by the efforts of David Jones, to reinstate the clock. We must remember that the East and West Looe towns were very different, and there was a fair amount of rivalry between the two. The two clock faces on St Nicholas Church look only towards the west because they were not going to give the East Looe folk the time of day. Now we move away from the church and quayside towards the fire station and West Looe Square beyond. Here is the Jolly Sailor Inn, Looe's oldest pub, built in the 15th century during the reign of Henry VIII. Inside are low old beams taken from 3 masters after the Battle of Trafalgar. Ask the present landlord how, back in the 18th century, the landlady foiled the revenue men. There is a line drawing of this event hanging in the pub above the fireplace. Outside again, stand back and see a ridge tower representing the devil on horseback. The tradition in Looe is that they ward off ill luck from the house and its occupants. A similar ridge tower, but better preserved, can be seen on the roof of Islander Cottage, a short way up West Looe Hill on the right. Our next stop is the Old Meat Market. This hexagonal building on an island site was built originally as a meat market in 1853. There is a date stone over one of the archways. The building is now a florist and vegetable shop. The archways around the side of the building were provided to allow plenty of fresh air to reach the meat in those pre-refrigeration days. They would have been filled with louvers rather than glass. The auction for live animals was held just outside and was announced by the ringing of the bell in the cupola above. Notice the weather vane depicting an archer mariner armed with sword, bow and arrow. This symbol is on the ancient West Looe town seal. Leaving West Looe Square via a small road in front of the spa shop, we come to Vine Cottage. It is easy to see how this cottage got its name, nestled snugly between the small side road and the river. Back on the quayside now, we pass the Port Byron, which is the old name for West Looe and means little harbour. Beyond is the Riverside United Church, set up originally on this site in 1787. The present building dates from the 1880s and was refurbished in the 1990s. A minute or so further up the river we pass the Harbour Moon, and above it on the hill the line of old grey coastguard cottages built in 1892. Just beyond the pub and in the side of the wall is an ancient stone. This shows the westward location of the medieval bridge completed in 1436 with its 15 uneven stone arches. William of Worcester, writing in 1478, was so impressed that he described the bridge as 6 bowshots in length. It had a central buttress with a tiny oratory dedicated to St. Anne. The stone reads, "Repaired by the county 1689, which reminds us that the county unusually paid the bill. Just opposite the old bridge house, and on the edge of the quay at the top of a flight of stone steps down into the river, is a stone laid by Prince George in 1931 to mark the start of the refurbishment of the quayside. The present bridge was built in 1853 to replace the medieval one. 7 fine arches now span the water. The tunnel arch at the western end gave vehicular access from the bridge to West Looe until 1895 by means of a loop road bearing right off the bridge and turning in front of the tide mill to go seawards underneath. At the time no road along the quay existed. The present bridge, built 12 feet wide, was doubled in width in 1960. There is a slate plaque in the parapet halfway across. The new work is on the upstream side and the joins can be seen underneath the arches. A further arch on the east side has been filled in, but arch stones can be seen on the seaward side. As we cross the bridge, we'll take time to look northwards towards where the east and west Looe rivers converge. On the west side is the old mill, a 17th century technology that worked well here for 3 centuries by using the rise and fall of the tide. In 1614, a Thomas Arundel of Tremardart obtained the right to enclose 13.5 acres of the West Looe estuary. This is now mostly tarmacked over as the Millpool car park. Thomas Arundel built a stone wall around the lake with a mill house and lock gates at the seaward end. The flow of the incoming tide would open the lock gates and the lake would fill up. When the tide turned, the gates would be closed by the force of the water, and the contents of the lake would be available to work the 4 undershot wheels in the mill house. A grist mill for many years, it turned to the processing of imported bones to make fertiliser and was working until about the time of World War I. Look low down for the outline of the built-up archways where the used water came out. We now move into East Looe and look south along the side of the river and harbour. There are often some magnificent old luggers lovingly restored in the harbour. Our daddy and our boys were both built in Looe for the fishing industry around 1921 by Dick Pearson's son for the Pengelly family. In 1836, when an exceptional seam of copper was discovered near Minions around the area of Carradon Hill on Bodmin Moor, huge amounts of the ore were brought down from the moor by the horse railway and canal barge and deposited at the side of the river to be collected by ships to be smelted at works in South Wales. It became necessary to build a quay both to store the copper and to support the railway. Buller Quay was built in 1856 and ran along the side of the river from the bridge almost to the seafront. At one time, a vast amount of copper was shipped through Looe, and it led to prosperity for the town and the surrounding areas. This in turn led to improvements to roads and building of the new bridge to replace the 1436 structure. A section of the original rail line that brought the ore from the mines on Bodmin Moor can be found on the quayside just before the newly erected stanchion crane and the wooden buildings. They are modern structures built to conform to EU regulations. The packing sheds in 1990 and the fish market in 1986. A little further on towards Pengelly's wet fish shop, we can see another length of railway line embedded in the road, a reminder that the railway from Liskeard, built in 1860, used to run all the way into Looe along the quay, almost as far as the mouth of the river. Note the height of the fish market above the road. This was the original platform height for offloading the ore. It is now just right for loading the fish boxes onto the trucks. The line down from the station was dismantled in only 1955. A further 100 yards beyond the fish market towards the river mouth, we pass the 19th century large 3-storey warehouses with their low-down pulley wheels in the walls, used to hoist materials to the upper floors. In front of us is the modern lifeboat station, opened in 2003. Across the river are the arches at Pennyland in West Looe. Joseph Thomas was the instigator and architect of the road to Hannaford, built in 1895. Previously, West Looe had stopped abruptly at St Nicholas Church, which had buildings adjoining it. A large photograph of this can be seen in the Salutation Inn. There was no access to the coast except the steep and narrow Hannaford Lane, which can be seen higher above the road. Building the road involved demolishing the 2 buildings nearest to the church and cutting through the outcrop of rock behind. The next part, the little bay at Pennyland, needed a causeway to carry the road. Joseph Thomas built the 3 arches and the larger arch beyond to carry his road. The turrets were not in the original plans, but were added for decoration. Past the lifeboat station we come to the famous Banjo Pier. In the 1840s, a long straight groin, tapering off at the seaward end, was built between the harbour river mouth and the beach. It was hoped that it would prevent sand clogging the harbour mouth, but this was not entirely successful. Joseph Thomas put forward the idea of taking the end off the groin and substituting a round. The locals were sceptical, and he had to offer to forego his fee if the plan failed. The round at the seaward end was constructed in 1896 to 1897 and was successful. Admiral Riley, chairman of the Harbour Commissioners, gave the lamp which was erected at the pier end. The pier was to be named Riley's Pier. However, 2 local girls chatting were heard to say, "My dear, it do look exactly like a banjo, don't it?" And so it became the Banjo Pier. We can see on the sides of the pier wooden pegs put in to absorb water, thereby swelling and helping to hold the stonework together. Next to the pier, and in the corner of the beach, is a pile of World War II tank traps, concrete tapered blocks about 6 feet long with metal spikes. From the pier we move along the promenade towards the church tower. Here is the old lifeboat station built for Looe's first lifeboat in 1866. This station, next to the watchtower and obelisk, remained in use until 1930, when the lifeboat was withdrawn. It was reinstated in 1992. Further on we come to St Mary's Church. Originally the church was established as a chapel of ease in 1259 by Henry de Bodrugan. The present building, constructed from Plymouth limestone, converted to flats, is only about 100 years old. However, the original tower still standing is all that remains of the original church. This tower used to be whitewashed and served as a day mark for shipping up to the beginning of World War I. Notice the 18th century single-handed clock renovated in 1996. Again, the clock face looked only towards East Looe. No face was installed to show the people of West Looe the time. Just east of the tower stands Church House, which was built for the clergy. It stands directly opposite the door of St Mary's Church, with the old vicarage next to it on the corner. The date is believed to be 16th century. It has been suggested that the house could have much earlier beginnings and have been used by the monks who administered St Mary's when the original stone church was built in the 1200s. Behind the church we now enter the narrow back streets of Looe. The area between Higher Market Street and Lower Street was laid out in a grid pattern said to be unique in early Tudor times, hence the narrow streets. Facing sea breeze opposite the church tower, we turn right down Lower Chapel Street and pass Lantau House, possibly a merchant's house. The first floor oriel windows are original, as are the front and back doorways. Further on down Lower Chapel Street is Osborne House, now a restaurant but damaged by fire in 2004. This has been much altered but is still a substantial building and may also have been a merchant's house. Nearby is the Old Market Square, now a convenient car park for residents. In the southeast corner towards the sea and by the wall of Curlew Cottage is a plaque in the pavement showing where the town well used to be in the 19th century. There is a good photo of this well in the old Guildhall Museum. Leaving the square we find the Smuggler's Cot, now a restaurant, with its impressive 18th century facade. The original arched doorway opening onto Higher Market Street suggests that it is one of the oldest buildings in Looe. The truly massive chimney is very prominent. Timbers from the Spanish Armada are said to have been used in the later remodelling and extension of the house. The house boasts a secret passageway which may have been used for hiding smuggled goods. Still in Higher Market Street is the old Guildhall, now a museum which is well worth a visit. The building was raised to accommodate a first floor in 1587 when East Looe obtained its Elizabethan royal charter. Notice the barred prison cell windows of the ground floor, a reminder that justice was administered here. Under the gable of the porch is the pillory, a further reminder that justice could take a different form in days gone by. We'll climb the steps and enter the museum to absorb further history of Looe. Some of the contents included show model ships important in the development of the fishing industry, together with tools and artefacts used for sail-making. There is also a marine curio of a small devilfish. The many exhibits are fascinating and well worth a lot more room than is afforded by this small, compact building. The magistrate's bench is still there in the upper room, along with much literature lovingly compiled by the museum staff. Ye Old Fisherman's Arms opposite the old Guildhall was built as a merchant's house in 1611. It has been a public house for many years now. Notice the twin gables facing out onto the street and then look at the original doorway. The jambs chamfered with reader design ending in patterned stops. The door, also original, has an unusual form with two small panels within two large ones. Look for the great buffer stones set on the corner to protect the house from damage by the iron-tired wheels of the vehicles entering Looe. Barbican Hill here was once the main road for traffic from the east. Near the Smuggler's Cot we find the East Looe Meat Market, now a restaurant. The road widens with the addition of a raised cobbled pavement. Here in the summer may be found a local artist sketching portraits for the visitors. The building rising up has large window apertures originally louvered to admit a good supply of fresh air for the meat. The original meat hooks are still in the beams outside. The upper floor, reached by the flight of stone steps, was originally the Mechanics' Institute. Moving further along Higher Market Street towards the Mayflower Studio, we can now see another pub, Ye Old Salutation Inn. Here the original Shark Angling Club used to meet, led by Brigadier Caunter, as can be seen by the many photographs on display around the bar. Step down inside and notice the sloping floor. It had its uses in the past when high spring tides flooded into the building. Old ship's timbers were used to build the salle in the 17th century. The facade is 18th century. Along 4th Street, and just after the Grapevine restaurant, is the timbered exterior of Dowling and Bray's antique shop, dated 1666. Nearby and opposite is the Golden Guinea, one of Looe's finest old houses. Thomas Bond lived here and published a history of Looe around 1823. He left a fortune of 10,000 guineas in gold in the house for his heir. His tomb can be seen in St. Martin's churchyard. The date 1632 may be found in the middle corbel of the left-hand upstairs window. Along 4th Street towards the clock tower, we come to the new Guildhall and the rose garden to its side, which offers sheltered places to sit. In the Guildhall wall above can be seen high barred windows of the prison cells. It was built in 1877 in Gothic Revival style to replace the smaller medieval building in Higher Market Street, and boasts a fine series of stained glass windows illustrating Looe's history in the upper council chamber. Over the main original doorway is a representation of the coat of arms of East Looe, which depicts a single-masted ship with the two figures of Joseph of Arimathea and the boy Jesus. Legend says Jesus stayed on Looe Island whilst his uncle traded in Looe. East and West Looe were combined in 1898 under a common seal. Northwards along 4th Street we pass the Swan, an old coaching house. Further on, and almost opposite Boots the Chemist, can be found in the low wall the bridge stone marking the eastern extent of the medieval bridge. This is a duplicate of the stone seen on the opposite side of the river near the Harbour Moon pub. We are now back at the bridge, a central point from which to survey the journey and the heritage uncovered. If you would like to walk the Heritage Trail in Looe, it takes about 1.5 hours. The walking is easy and mostly accessible to wheelchair users. Paper trail guides are available from St. Nicholas Church, where our trail begins, the Tourist Information Centre by the clock tower, and from the Boatswain's Locker near the lifeboat station. You will also find large trail interpretation boards at these points.